everyone, I'm Ian's Whirling here for Ian's podcast. This production is brought to you by Ian's Bacon, the best in the West.
Tasty.
In today's podcast, we will be traveling back in time to the 1920s to interview people living back then in Macomb County about the Tom Robinson case. The Tom Robinson case is very complicated. It starts off as just Tom Robinson walking home after work. On his way back, he passes the Ewell household. The Ewells are kind of a family that consists of an unknown amount of children and a dad. They only really live off their welfare check. As Tom Robinson was walking back from work, Myella Ewell asked him inside to fix something up for her. This has happened many times before. Now here's where things can get a little confusing. According to Myella Ewell, Tom had tried to rape her once he was inside. She also claims that he beat her and choked her. But according to Tom, he was turning around from fixing the cottonwood when Myella threw herself on him. So far, there seems like there really was no harm done. But back in the 1920s, African Americans were not treated with very equal rights, and whites and blacks were still segregated. Since Tom Robinson was black and Myella Ewell was white, it was against the law for them to love the other race or get married. Myella's father had walked in during this incident and saw what was happening. He claims that he ran Tom off and called Mr. Heck Tate. Tom just says that he ran off. In today's podcast, we will interview 3 of Macomb's residents and see their perspective on the case. Today's first interview will be with Mr. Atticus Finch. Hello, Mr. Finch. Hello. Thank you very much for coming out today, and we hope just to ask you a few questions about the Tom Robinson case. That's fine. So, for our first question, we would like to ask you if you think that Tom Robinson was innocent. Well, according to the verdict, he was guilty, but I do think that he was innocent. I think that it was made pretty clear that Bob Ewell was trying to cover up the fact that he had most likely beaten Myella. And why do you say that? Well, during the trial, it was pointed out that Myella was beaten on the right side of her face. She claims that Tom was facing her at the time of her beating. In order for her right side to have been beaten, her attacker would have had to use his left hand. Now, Tom has an injury on his left hand that pretty much prevents him from using it. So most likely Tom would not have attacked her with his left hand. So, if you're saying that Tom Robinson didn't attack her, who did? Well, during the cross-examination of Mr. Ewell, it was shown that he was left-handed, and everyone knows who lives in Macomb County that Mr. Ewell is a very rough person. So you are implying that Mr. Ewell was the one who beat Myella? Well, yes and no. See, Tom Robinson was asked into our house by her to fix something. I think that we can see that, judging by Tom's character, that he would have been obliged and happy to help out. I think that after he had helped out Myella, she probably fell in love with him. Back then, having a relationship with an African American was against the law if you were white. So if we go by Tom's story that Myella threw herself on him, then most likely he would have been a little scared, and since Bob Ewell managed to see that this was happening, he probably got really mad at Myella. Finally, judging by Mr. Ewell's character, he probably would have likely beaten her for her crime, and because of that, he would have had to blame someone since he couldn't go to jail, so he blamed it on Tom Robinson. Well, thank you very much for coming out today, Mr. Finch. Next person that we will interview today will be Jean Louise Finch's Aunt Alexandra. Hello, Alexandra.
Hello.
Thank you so much for coming out today. I was hoping that you could answer some of our questions on the Tom Robinson case.
I would be happy to.
Thank you very much. To start us off, what are your perspectives on the Tom Robinson case?
Well, mainly, I think that Myella had played a part in it, but she would have been able to prevent it. The law is that white people are not supposed to love or really interact with the black people. Had she respected it, or had Tom Robinson respected it, then most likely she would be fine and have no injuries, and Tom Robinson would still be alive.
Do you think that it was right that Tom Robinson was shot?
Well, yes and no. Yes, because he was a convict and he was trying to escape. And shooting for warning and then eventually shooting to kill is standard protocol, so I think that his shooting was definitely justifiable. But then again, I think that it wasn't right because it was pointed out pretty well by Atticus that he was innocent. So really, he shouldn't even have been in prison in the first place, which makes the shooting not right.
Finally, I would like to ask you one last question. Do you think that this case may have an influence on the children? And do you think that potentially their generation will grow up to be smarter and more likely wiser because of this?
Definitely. I think that this case will maybe not a very positive impact on them, but it will have a major impact. And because of that, I think that this case will most likely cause them to think deeper about certain decisions, and they will most likely change their opinions on topics and situations similar to this. Atticus's actions during this case had a great influence on them and will definitely cause them to create a better world than this one.
Thank you so much for coming out today and answering our questions.
You're welcome.
Next up, we will be interviewing Mr. Cunningham. Hello, Mr. Cunningham. Hi there. Thank you so much for coming out today, and I hope you don't mind if we ask you a few questions about the Tom Robinson case. That is fine. Well, just for starters, what were your first thoughts on the Tom Robinson case? Well, when I first got wind of the news, I was like, well, that man better keep his darn hands off of our children, because he ain't got no right to go around assaulting girls. He ought to be hung for that. Originally, you were going to lynch Mr. Robinson. What did Scout do to make you change your mind and fight for his innocence? Well, you are right. I had got a bunch of my kin around to go and hang him for his crimes. Then Miss Jean Louise Finch, Scout, came out and said to me to tell my son Walter hi for her. She had beaten him up once, but then she did let him come over for supper. Then, when she started talking about money problems and bringing up the fact that, yes, I had a big problem with it, it had got me thinking. I thought, I'll be darned if there was another side to this story. For all we know, Mr. Robinson could be innocent and we were killing him for no good reason. I thought, he has enough problems of his own and we should just let him be and help him through this time the best that we can. As for fighting for his innocence, many of my kin saw what Jean Louise Scout did and also thought about it. That is why one of our men fought so hard for him on the jury. It may have not turned out the way that we had wanted it to, but we still put up a good fight. Finally, what was your reaction to what happened at the prison when Tom Robinson was shot? I was plain shocked, mainly really at Tom, because it seemed that he had no hope or strength left after the trial. The fact that he broke out in an outrage and came so close to escaping just caught me off guard. I was extremely sorry when I heard that he had passed, but I do think that his death was justified. It was standard to fire off warning shots before shooting to kill, and he was trying to escape. And that's what they did, and unfortunately had a bad outcome. Well, thank you so much for coming out, Mr. Cunningham. I really appreciate you coming out here to talk to us about such a deep topic. It was nothing. Well, as you can see, folks, many people of the people that we interviewed think that this was a very deep topic and that Tom Robinson was innocent. I hope that this will hopefully have an influence on you in the future. Thank you guys so much for listening to this podcast.